If you carry a firearm and discharge your weapon in self-defense, you could face hundreds of thousands of dollars in legal fees and expenses. So carry the protection of CCW Safe, Self-Defense Legal Services membership. Upfront payment of all criminal and civil defense costs with no out-of-pocket for members.
And we are back with another episode of Survival Dispatch. I'm John Wheaton, founder of Righteous Savages, co-host here on the Survival Dispatch podcast. And you guys will see me every Tuesday and Sunday, unless it's a special circumstance like last Sunday where you saw Chris. There's a reason for that I'll get into later. But I'm glad to be back with you guys. And tonight, as always, I am joined by my friend and cohort, Mr. S2. How are you tonight?
Yeah, I'm fine. How are you?
Nice. Here we go. We're off and running. So tonight we're discussing previous ISIS attacks are the blueprint for the next round of terror attacks on the U.S. homeland. Thanks to Biden and Mayorkas opening our southern border for 4 years, hundreds of thousands of SIAs, which is a special interest alien, came into our country. The precise number from Biden's DHS is 200,000 SIAs were released into America. Intel shows ISIS plans to attack 1 to 15 tier 2 cities with only have one or less level 1 trauma centers. However, the prospect of a October 7th, open air attack on a large event is also possible. So this evening, stay until the end, and we'll get all of our answers in for these issues. So, one of the things that really is a serious problem is, obviously, we know about the open border. We've known about it. It was porous before, but for 4 years, it was completely open. And it allowed many of these SIAs to come in really unmolested to our country. And when the enemy sees a weakness, they're going to exploit it. And the Islamic State, former ISIS, Al-Qaeda, Taliban, have joined forces, as we've talked about many times on this podcast. They've joined forces to form the Islamic Army, which is against us and Western ideology, Western civilization. And that's what we're seeing, and that's what we're going to discuss tonight. This is kind of a follow-up to our show last Tuesday, where we talked about the 2015 Paris attack. We're going to kind of build on that foundation and talk about where we could see these attacks, what they would look like, and what prime targets are out there. It can be large events, large gatherings. We'll talk about a couple of those. And it can be tier 2 cities, which is that 100 to 500,000 population cities in the United States. All right, but before we get going, let's do our conflicted question. For those of you who are new to us tonight, we do a conflicted question, which is a kind of SHTF survival question that will make you think about scenarios that you may have to deal with in these kind of doomsday type situations. And I will turn this over to S2 to talk and present that question, and then we will dive into the show. S2, take it away.
Okay, here we go. Is ambushing an equal force that is fighting against you an intelligent move, or does that make you a less than honorable adversary? Kind of had to chuckle at that one.
Less than honorable. That is an interesting question. It is. It definitely makes you think. But yeah, so keep that question in the back of your heads. Think about your answers, and we'll have you guys put them in the chat. Would you, attacking an equal force, be intelligent, or would it make you a less than honorable adversary? Save your questions till the end. We'll have him in the chat. We may even read a couple of them if we have time. One last reminder before we get going, join the crusade by signing up for a free Substack account so you get the Saturday Watch Guide. The Saturday Watch Guide is a fully curated guide to allow you guys to see what we have done throughout the week. Maybe you missed a week because you were on vacation, or maybe you're brand new to us and you don't know all of the stuff that we talk about. So if you just go over and sign up for a free account on Substack, it will give you that, which is really kind of a starting point for Survival Dispatch and all of the content that we put out. And it is a lot. We have a 6-day-a-week podcast, as well as numerous articles and intel reports that we put out in our various locations. That way you'll never miss an episode and you'll never be a victim of big tech censorship, not censorship. I can't speak tonight, which is the number one way they suppress is by not letting you know when we are live or when a new episode is out. So fight against that by going over and joining up our Substack on our Substack. Also, use code EATMEAT for 10% off at Carnivalt. Amazing meat. I am ready for my second round of it because it is really, really incredible. And it's an amazing option if you want to make sure that your preps have proper high quality proteins embedded in them. Really, really awesome stuff. So go over there and check that out.
Yeah, eat meat.
Well, it looks like Beavis is here tonight. So anyways, moving on to the main topic. Previous ISIS attacks are the blueprint for the next round of terror attacks on the U.S. homeland. So thanks to that open border that we mentioned earlier, we are suffering, and we're going to continue to deal with this. So America is under siege from her enemies. We invited through our own front door. For 4 years, Biden-Harris administration has systematically dismantled border security, allowing those 200,000 special interest aliens into our homeland. These aren't asylum seekers or economic migrants. These are individuals from terror-prone nations who pose national security risks. As conservatives, we believe that protecting our families, protecting our communities, and protecting our nation is very important. So we must understand personal responsibility starts with recognizing threats to our way of life and taking action to defend what we hold sacred. So without further ado, we will jump into our first article and respond to it. And this is really, it's just Wikipedia, which is in some cases, I would say that if they're reporting terrorist attacks, they're probably underreporting them, just because this is.
It's the CIA. What do you want?
Oh, well, yeah, exactly. So to date, this is just 2025, and I'll just scroll through this really quickly. We obviously had the New Orleans truck attack. That is really the one on this list that happened in America. Doesn't mean it wasn't the only attempt, because the real issue with terrorist attacks is you don't always know when you thwart them. And sometimes it's years before you know whether you thwarted them or not. So we don't know if there have been multiple terrorist attacks by local law enforcement or the FBI that have been thwarted, that have not been reported, or they didn't even know they had thwarted a terrorist attack. But you can, as we scroll down here, you can see a ton, and I would look at the body counts here. Dead 14 plus 1, injured 57. 0 in the Niger attack. Mali, no information. 27 in Nigeria, 70 in DRC. And you can just see this is a ever-growing list. And you don't hear much about this in the media. You're more likely to hear your latest celebrities' next trip to rehab or some other stupid crap. Dildos being thrown on the courts of WNBA games, which I personally think is hilarious. But that's the stuff that gets reported in the news, and it's all a distraction from what's hidden behind in the truth. You can see all the way up to really July 2nd is the last one that was updated. So within the last month, we have reported terrorist attacks around the world. If
And
you
look at
go,
and look at the patterns of them too. Start looking at the dates and the locations, because
Mhm.
if you pop those out into a separate spreadsheet on themselves, they usually indicate something like there was some sort of probing or some sort of dry run going on.
Mhm. Yeah, and that's really where we want to get with this tonight is that past behavior is the number one predictor of future behavior. So if somebody has done something in the past, they're going to try and do it again, or they may try and do worse if they were successful, or at least the probe was successful. So, um, including attacks by non-violent state actors and for political motives, these terrorist attacks have killed 137 people, including 90 at the Bataclan theater. This is actually, I apologize. My little notes are a little wonky here. That's actually talking about the Paris attack. Sorry, I read the wrong line. My fault. um, so another, basically 137 people. My apologies. I'm going to just skip this because this is completely, and I don't know what I was doing when I typed this up. Anyways, I'm going to go to US2 and ask, so with the continual attacks that we're seeing across the world, what do those patterns tell you about what kind of tactics and what kind of target selection that these Islamic extremists are going to use? And let's take that information that we have, that we just scrolled through, and let's apply it to the homeland. I don't want to talk about the world necessarily. I want to talk about us in America and what these patterns are going to tell us about the future attacks and attempts, as far as
Well,
target selection and tactics.
well, a lot of what we see here is been attacks on military, government. Um, we've seen some attacks on innocents as well. Those have been a little less infrequent, but by and large, it's mostly been against military type units and government type units. So that indicates to me that they are trying to overthrow a government to take power in that region, which is exactly true.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
now, what I'm having a problem with is applying that to the United States, because I don't think they're going to take on our military, and I mean not our National Guard, but our military. I don't think they're going to want to take on our military toe to toe, which is one of the reasons why they've taken on guerrilla tactics. You know, the earliest one that we've seen in the U.S. was the car bombing attack in Louisiana. You know, and honestly, in looking at that, that partially had to do with incompetence. I also think that there was some element of forewarning of that, and there was some preparation indicating there could have been some inside sources there that we didn't see.
yeah.
And there are other details that I really can't talk about because I've been sworn to secrecy by Mike Sterling to not talk about the details of what has been discovered there. But I'm very familiar with the technology that was used.
Interesting. Okay. That's ominous, but also interesting to know. And I'll throw this up here. We always kind of refer to this website. This website's a great resource. It's called thereligionofpeace.com, and it's a website that is curated to report every terrorist attack since 9/11. 48,005 terrorist attacks have happened. So we look at that and we say, oh, well, that's, obviously 9/11 was 24 years ago, almost 24 years ago. And, it's kind of crazy because most of the younger people that I'm around have forgotten this. They've
And get
forgotten go ahead.
and guess what's coming up?
Yeah. The anniversary, literally less than a month away, a month from yesterday, as a matter of fact. And this is a very, very ominous thing for us to deal with, because the average person is not, especially someone that's in their 20s, or even somebody that a lot of people, like my wife's a high school teacher, all of her students weren't alive when 9/11 happened. My children were not alive, and if not for me telling them, and regardless of what your opinion is of inside job or whatever, American people died. And that is something that we should all take account of, and understand that that there are forces out there that want to inflict pain and death on us because of our way of life. And that's not changed. That is radical Islam in a nutshell. But as to further this conversation, how has the scale of Islamic terrorism evolved since 9/11? What is the key evolution of that, of what terrorism looks like now versus 9/11?
Well, I think after 9/11, everybody had a target. They had a specific target they were going after, which was bin Laden and Al Qaeda. Um, the way things have evolved now, you have several different factions, warring factions that historically have never gotten along with each other, that are now coming together in a confluence to plan and potentially execute these attacks if they're not exposed, if they're not intercepted, et cetera, et cetera.
Right, exactly. And that is something that we really have to take into account. And we're going to use, ISIS and that term a lot tonight. When I say ISIS tonight, it's actually what I'm evoking is I'm talking about Islamic Army, which is the combination of all of these terrorist cells and terrorist organizations under one umbrella. Sarah Adams talks about this ad nauseum in a lot of her podcasts that she's on. I am working very hard to get her on Survival Dispatch in the near future, which will be very cool. You guys know that that Khalid Muhammad has worked closely with her in the past and still does today. So we're working on getting her. I have some contacts that I made that can possibly bring her on, which would be really, really cool. And so we hope we can share that with you guys. But moving to really what we're looking at as far as this Islamic State. So Islamic State, this is from The Guardian, which is actually a fairly solid European newspaper. Islamic State is primed to be a thorn in the side of the incoming Trump administration. So this was from last November, shortly after the election. Amid a presidential campaign, the foreign policy discussions more focused on the wars in Ukraine, Gaza, and Lebanon. The Islamic State stayed under the radar while calling on its supporters and operatives to attack Americans on Election Day. The FBI thwarted a plot in Oklahoma City only weeks before the vote, prompting a similar public reaction to news involving the terror group that has become customary of late. The Islamic State is a renewed threat, but the reality is the terrorist group has always been one to watch. Over the last few years, since the fall of the so-called caliphate, the Islamic State was forced to reimagine itself and rallied by reconstructing its cells in Europe and reinforcing its strongholds in Afghanistan under the banner of a very busy ISKP branch and another in Somalia, among others. Now,
Al-Shabaab.
Yes. So now Islamic State is primed to be a major thorn in the side of the incoming Trump administration and wants to be active this holiday season. So obviously, we did have the attack on New Year's Day, so that was during the holiday season. So we can see this article is pointing out that, hey, there could be attacks coming. We did have an attack in New Orleans on New Year's Eve, New Year's Day. I think it was early morning hours of New Year's Day. So with that in mind, how did the Biden administration border policies enable ISIS to infiltrate? And what specific intelligence warnings were ignored regarding ISIS threats? S2?
Well, what border policy?
That would be a
Open
very...
the door, let them in. Specific intelligence warnings ignored, all of
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
In fact, they were continuing to give the Taliban $40 million after they withdraw from Afghanistan. And they just kept doing it, kept doing it, kept doing it. And like Trump
what's
says,
crazy about that is that the people were constantly bringing this up. I mean, like it was on Sean Ryan's podcast, which has millions of views on YouTube, and then other millions of downloads on the audio only version. Like they were sounding the alarm constantly about, hey, we're still paying these guys, and we left them $80 billion worth of freaking military equipment. It's insane.
I'd like to say that I trust the IC, but I do to a certain extent. But their lack of visible action tells me that they're waiting and they're not taking this as seriously as they should. Because frankly, they have camps here, training camps here in the United States. We have a map of those camps. We know right where they are. And if we know where they are, the military knows where they are. And for the life of me, I cannot figure out why we are not being proactive and going in there and smoking every single one of them.
Do you think there's a possibility we've been able to infiltrate them, and maybe that's why?
I don't care. Smoke them.
Right. Don't give them a chance. It's kind of like
be proactive for a change.
Well, we don't do a great job across the aisle on that. Both sides of the aisle do terrible jobs on that. And yeah. But so with that in mind, obviously on the governmental level, there are some issues, quite a few issues, and there have been for a while across multiple administrations. I think that Trump is trying as hard as he can to get as many of these migrants out, but it's a slow process, unfortunately. But how, on a community level, how can Americans protect themselves while government transitions actually occur and we actually get this stuff rolling? Remember, Trump has only been in office for 7 months, essentially. So we're still kind of at the beginning stages of that. So what would you say? How can communities protect themselves during this period of really transition to the new administration actually getting its wheels rolling on deportations? Just
basically know your environment and pay attention to what's going on in your environment and get your head out of your phone. If you understand your environment, you know what's around it, you know the people that are in it. It's kind of like the game on Sesame Street. Which one of these things does not belong? And it becomes very evident which doesn't belong. And that can be, there are ways to investigate that on your own without drawing attention to yourself. And then if you suspect something, then you need to be in touch with your local law enforcement to let them take over at that point. However, I don't think a lot of law enforcement is prepared to deal with what they're going to find.
I think that's actually a really, really good point. And this is really kind of sad because I work around police a lot in the extra stuff that I do for Righteous Savages and then some of our local police departments. And I can tell you this, they're not ready. They're not ready for this level of, I guess, passion. Keep in mind, most police officers, they deal with guys that are grifting petty criminals that are doing a little bit of drugs and maybe robbing convenience stores, and they kind of live in the thug life or whatever. And they go into these houses. They're not meeting an actual organized armed force with, say, stuff like night vision, thermals, all of that kind of stuff. It's they're woefully unprepared for that kind of a threat. They're also woefully unprepared for a coordinated attack. They don't even train that kind of stuff. Most of what they're training is going in, house searches, high risk warrants, that kind of stuff, and it's mainly tied to drugs. Very, very important. I mean, honestly, the cartels. There's a reason why they have been dubbed, terrorist organizations, is because they are terrorizing the American people through bringing drugs into the country that are killing people, that are causing our cities to have higher crime rates. It's just they are doing this kind of stuff.
It's a chemical
But
attack.
right. Well, and that can also be a thing that comes in through these drug. I mean, here's the thing: the cartels. We've known that some cartels have worked with terrorist organizations for a long time, and if they could bring in something like sarin gas, any kind of there's a numerous kinds of things that they could bring in that would be devastating if set off in a tier 2 city, someplace that's not prepared for it. And I would even say that, I live in a smaller rural area, but I would even say that our tier 2 cities, like SWAT teams, are not ready for this because they're still dealing with the stuff that I mentioned earlier. And it's we are not ready for this. And with that in mind, that's kind of where our knowledge and preparedness on our own is so important and paramount to this. So this article is from actually last October. A couple of these are actually from older articles, but it kind of gives us a picture of like, oh, okay, we were getting some warnings from some organizations, news organizations back then, and now we're kind of ramping up to where we are now. But DHS threat report warns migrants with terrorism ties will continue to exploit border crisis. Now, keep in mind, this is when Biden was still president. So this is DHS under Biden actually saying this. So if they're saying this kind of stuff, how bad is the reality? If they're saying 200,000 high importance gotaways, people, possible threats, what's the actual number? What are your thoughts on that, S2?
I think it's probably higher. Anytime the government reports something, it's only numbers that they actually can report. They don't count the ones that they haven't caught, didn't have any encounter with, et cetera, et cetera.
So, yeah. And so why would they put out a report like this if they were keeping the border open? Why would they put out a report that says, oh, this could actually be a bad thing? There could be terrorists coming into the country. Is that just a COIA activity? What are your thoughts?
The government was terrorizing its own public. I mean, that's all this is propaganda.
Yeah. It all comes down to control. And that's the sad thing. And if they can control you by means of terrorist threats, or they can control you by means of a scary cough from a country that shall remain nameless, with the that sounds like Ovid. Anyways, so how can and how should local law enforcement, and this is for anybody in our audience that may be attached, maybe you're a police officer, maybe you're a police chief, maybe you're a sheriff, with your intel background, S2, what would be your guiding points for local law enforcement? Because we know that the federal side it's overwhelmed with trying to deport all of these illegals, and it's getting tons of pushback by these blue states that are harboring these people. But in local law enforcement, there's a lot of power with your local sheriff's office and your city level stuff. But what should those agencies be doing and preparing for with these terrorist threats? What would be your outline for that?
So the problem that you have is that you have sanctuary states and sanctuary cities. and not all of law enforcement is on the same sheet of music. They think that they can control what Al Qaeda 2.0 is going to do through diplomacy, and they don't understand that there is no negotiation with these people. There just is no negotiation. So that's the first thing they need to understand and essentially get their heads out of their asses and start preparing for standard operating procedures to address these things should they happen. And not to mention, they know where their higher populations of, I'll say, Islamic radicals are. They know where they are. I mean, the guys on the ground, they know exactly where they are. So that's another thing to watch out for. New faces in the area, weird comings and goings, things like that. Um, Network with local special forces vets. Problem with that, believer, is a lot of the times you don't know who your local special forces vets are because they don't like to tell you who they are.
Yeah.
Uh,
Some do, and like sometimes you may go to church with one of them, and but yeah, I would say it's not all of them want to be out in
yeah,
the spotlight, because then you end up with, honestly, just full disclosure, you end up with somebody like Mike Glover, who has something go on in his personal life and then gets crucified in the public eye, even when he was completely exonerated of all the issues.
yeah,
So, and he's on our podcast multiple times a week, and so it's one of those things, like, not everybody wants to be in the public eye. Not everybody wants to let you know what they did, and a lot of the special operations level guys, from Rangers all the way up to Delta and SEALs,
they
they
can't
just
talk
kind of want
about
to
it.
live their life, or they can't talk about it. Yeah. So
So the other thing that uh, local law enforcement agencies can do is to be prepared with weaponry and things of that nature. I don't even want to say necessarily body armor, because I don't think body armor is going to help you in a situation where you're going to need to utilize it. I would prefer myself to have mobility and heavy firepower over armor. Armor will slow you down. Start looking in your areas where potential gunfights could happen and start mapping those areas out and plan accordingly to your response.
yeah, in all honesty, most of the time I would prefer to have a chest rig rather than a plate carrier
Exactly.
in
Uh,
almost every situation.
Chest, a plate carrier with plates on it is generally good for static positions. It's not good for movement. And
Yeah.
every single case shows the guy that draws blood first is the one that wins the gunfight. And you must be aggressive. You cannot sit back behind a dumpster shooting at people and expect to win.
Yeah. So, um, I completely agree with that. Be prepared to be violent. Violence is not inherently bad thing. It's actually a moral. It can be used for good. It can be used for bad. Be prepared to do violence when you see violence. That's all I can say.
Violence solves everything.
So this is from CNN. Back in January, actually, ISIS no longer rules a territory, but its recruits still pose a global threat. Many years since ISIS, also known as the Islamic State, held sway over much of Syria and northern Iraq, a time when it spawned affiliates throughout Africa and Asia, organized a series of deadly terror attacks in European cities. But as a terror group, it remains active in more than a dozen countries, and has inspired supporting individuals and cells in Europe and Russia in recent years. ISIS and is far from moribund, and even if it is now a loosely linked network rather than a self-declared caliphate controlling sizable cities. The most high-profile attack claimed by ISIS in 2024 was a devastating assault on the Moscow shopping mall in March, which left at least 150 dead and more than 500 injured. we all remember that attack and how it went down. So, with that in mind, how does how does this apply to what we could see if they were going to do some sort of an attack on a populated area? Most of our tier 2 cities have malls that, are frequented on the weekends by a couple hundred people. Most of them are close to minor or major league sports. And those gatherings can pull many people. And let's talk about some other large events that could be targets for attack. Burning Man would be one that comes to mind. That's actually later on this month, and that draws like 70,000 people. It's out in the middle of nowhere. I've heard and read stories that security is kind of lax at times, and it could be a potential. This could really be a potential for kind of an October 7th style attack, aerial, drones, many kinds of things like that. So let's talk about that and get into kind of operational doctrine of what we've seen in these recent attacks last year in a mall, high populated area in Russia. Obviously, it wasn't open air like some of these other attacks, so we could use October 7th as a distant example of that as well as 3 years ago. So how is this? Can this be applied?
So there's a pattern here. So this was the Crocus City Hall. It was a concert venue in Moscow Oblast. And there were about 145 people killed and over 180 injured. That was probably listed as the most deadly attack in Russia in 2 decades.
Baslan School Massacre was probably the last one.
That was in 2004, actually.
Yep. Well, I mean, that's a couple of decades ago, but yeah.
Yeah. So this one obviously is a little more recent. But if we look at the Paris attacks, what was one of the venues they attacked? It was a concert.
A concert. Yep.
What events do we have coming up here in the United States? We have the FIFA soccer tournaments coming up.
Mm-hmm.
We have the Olympics coming up. Very large crowd gathering, people from all over the world. These are things that I'm seeing that they obviously are going after these types of things. They like to use incendiary devices. I think that was one of the things they did in the October 7th attack.
Yep.
So we look at what their tactics, techniques, and protocols are, and we can gather from their past attacks the potential of what they could possibly do in the future.
Heidi Lou actually brings up a really good point. College football, it's actually getting ready to kick off. Like it kicks off the end of August.
I think that would be opportunities for small scale probe attacks. You might see some knifings going on there, but they pretty much have those places locked down. Now, Boomer Chimichanga has a very good point here. High school football. There is generally 0 to none as far as security goes at high school.
There's a couple of cops typically for on duty, off duty cops, that kind of thing. And I was in Texas at one point, dude. Those high school football games will draw 5,000 people.
Yeah,
or more. Like they're college.
They like their football in Texas.
Oh yeah, well, I mean, their high school. Some of their high school stadiums look like college stadiums.
Yeah,
like they're crazy. Like Texas football is a serious thing. So yeah, that's obviously something that could be for sure.
Yeah, anything having to do with high school, anything having to do with a school, any type of large event where that can occur. Like I said, college football, those entry into those things are generally locked down pretty good, at least in the recent past, from what I've noticed.
Yeah. Well, because you have other kinds of threats too. I mean, it seems like with more and more social media, college athletes are more and more subjected to the public image and people that are, either trying to get famous or trying to do crazy things. So, yes, they have upped security on college campuses and college football, but that doesn't mean some kind of aerosolized attack couldn't happen via drone. That's the one big thing. And as was pointed out earlier, Khalid has actually said that these terrorists are most likely in safe houses having food and supplies brought to them by handlers, because we're talking about tens of thousands, maybe hundreds of thousands of people. So if they have a network like that, then setting up these things is very easy to do. As far as, they could have somebody that works for DoorDash that's just bringing them food to their safe houses all the time. We don't have the manpower to look out after all of that kind of stuff, because in this day and age, it's very common for people to regularly have food delivered to their house, regularly have groceries delivered to their house. So it's not out of the ordinary to see those things happen.
Well, even
So,
that data actually can present a pattern as well. If they're watching, because like I said, you cannot tell me that our intelligence agencies do not have a bead on where every single one of these guys are. And if they start looking at the patterns, they can draw that data, because the DoorDash people, now they had a scam going here where you'd have one guy that signs up for a DoorDash account, but then he would have 10 illegals working for him, delivering
mhm,
food under his ID. So you don't know which one of those could be delivering food, but you see a pattern of the endpoints. And that was something that Khalid was talking about yesterday with
yeah,
how they use their encrypted comms and things like that. If you start looking at their endpoints and where they end up, there's a commonality that occurs that will lead you down to where the path is.
yes,
So, or where the end point of that path goes. So, like I said, I don't see any possible way that our IC does not know where every single one of these guys is. The question is, why are they not being proactive? I mean, if you go in, okay, let's say we know that the Taliban is not directly involved in this, so they get to wash their hands of it, keep clean. But what are they waiting on? Who are they trying to not piss off?
right,
That's,
right.
is there some level of diplomacy that they're trying to accomplish here? I just don't see it.
And I don't either. It's a very interesting phenomena. Um, and so yeah, it's kind of a weird thing. But we have to be aware, and we have to. I mean, it is a moment where we have to engage in a crusade. And with that thought, if you want to join the crusade, go over to Substack and sign up for a free account so that you can get our Saturday Watch Guide, which will give you everything that we do on a weekly basis, thumbnails, links, and descriptions. It's absolutely free, and you get that as a thank you for joining up. And that is the way that you don't miss an episode. And please also don't forget our show sponsors. This show is brought to you by CCW Safe, one of the leaders in self-defense coverage. Carnivalt for all American high-quality meats. I can tell you it's amazing. Use code EATMEAT to get 10% off your order. And then if you're a police officer, or you're maybe a spouse of a police officer, or you're connected to your local police departments or agencies, tell them about Compliant Technologies for hands-on police gloves that really are far superior to tasers. So many things can go wrong with tasers. Once you have these gloves on your hands and you make contact with skin on a assailant, they are not going to be fighting back for long. So check those out, all of our sponsors, and tell them that we sent you. Moving on, this is our next article, and this is U.S. must not become complacent to growing terrorism threat, Counterterrorism Center officials say. McLean, Virginia, Brett Holmgren, there's an NBA player named Chet Holmgren. I wonder if they're related, but got woken up early New Year's Day by alerts that a driver had plowed through a crowd of revelers in New Orleans. That rampage, which killed 14 people, was the deadliest attack on U.S. soil in years that was inspired by the Islamic State group. The National Counterterrorism Center, which Holmgren leads, sprang into action to help the FBI run down information on the culprit from Texas and his plot. It was a rare recent example of mass attack motivated by religious extremism to hit the U.S. homeland, but it didn't occur in a vacuum. Coming at a time when terror threats that have waxed and waned for 2 decades since September 11th, 2001 attacks is decidedly on the rise around the world. We talked about that at the beginning of the show. We are in a period where we are facing an elevated threat environment, Holmgren said in an interview with the Associated Press. We faced that last year. We're going to face it again in 2025. That's an ominous warning by Brett Holmgren and the Counterterrorism Center. And with that thought, how has the New Orleans attack changed the threat assessment landscape? This guy didn't use guns. He didn't use bombs, although he did have some explosives in his vehicle. He used a vehicle. So this harkens to like the Nice, France attack that killed 87 people, I think, at a Christmas parade. Remember, we have holiday season coming up in just a few months. It's only really like 4 months to Christmas, guys. We're going to be in the Christmas holiday season with a lot of gatherings and a lot of, football's getting ready to start up. There's just a lot of community gatherings. I mean, even pumpkin patches, like those are big, pulling hundreds and thousands of people in on weekends to take their kids to an event. And remember, terrorism wants to hit you in the places where you don't expect it. You're just out trying to live free and love this country and all of the things that we have. And all of a sudden, you're faced with a terrorist attack. So how has this recent information changed our threat assessment landscape and how we do this, S2?
Yeah, I got to address Doherty first. Doherty, you don't want a Bearcat, dude. Those things are slow as hell. They're just big giant sloths. Anyway,
That's funny.
So the thing about
the
the January attack, there were so many things around that were just hinky. Like, the FBI sprang into action. All of a sudden, a recently purchased ISIS flag showed up on the back bumper of this dude's truck. I mean, still had the fold marks in it, like somebody took it out, and it wasn't there before the FBI showed up on the scene. So there were just so many hinky things about that thing that I hate to say this, and it's pretty much common knowledge now, but the FBI is not what it was set up to be anymore. It is an intelligence agency with law enforcement functions. They no longer solve crimes, they manage crimes. And we've seen the use of VBIDs before. I'll give you a case in point in Wisconsin a few years ago when the dude drove a Jeep through the Christmas parade. I had friends that were there, and one of them was a first responder and told me all about it. But that, with those types of things, I don't think that the threat assessment I don't think it's jarred anybody enough to say anything, because it's still happening. We see vehicles that have been used when we start going all the way back into Charlottesville, where that dude ran over this chick at the Fine People rally and whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
So mostly what we have to be looking for is improvised weapons. VBIDs are on the menu. We now have the development of drones, which anybody can go out and build a hobby level drone that is capable of delivering an explosive. It's not hard. Learning to fly them is a little harder, but it's possible. But I'm not seeing, as far as the public eye goes, I'm not seeing any big movements of awareness, short of the things that I've tried to tell people. And then people look at me because I'm in a new environment now. So when I try to tell people about this, they kind of look at me sideways.
Well, yeah. And I completely agree. But there are places where this is. So I told you guys I was going to tell you why I wasn't here on Sunday, and now's as good a time as any before we move into our terror threat snapshot. Um, I went to the Goals convention for Gun Owners of America. If you guys aren't aware of Gun Owners of America, you should be. They are everything that the NRA promised they would be and is not. They are actually fighting, and they're not. They're absolutely no compromise. They don't. They fought tooth and nail on the big beautiful bill to get the actual suppressors and short barrel rifles out of the NFA. Unfortunately, some jellyfish congressmen and senators bowed to that, and it's unfortunate. But I was at that convention all weekend, 4 days, one range day, a media day, and then a couple of just the days with some great speakers. John Lovell, Brandon Herrera was there, a lot of other people that you guys know, constitutional attorneys. I got to talk to a bunch of people. And I had a lot of people asking me, what do you see as a threat? And I was informing them on the stuff that we've been doing here on Survival Dispatch, the stuff that we've been talking about, the stuff that me and S2 talk about constantly. Guys, we've got to wake up and we've got to start looking at threat assessments. This stuff's going to hit you where you least expect it. And we all take trips to bigger cities. Even if you live in a rural area, you do take trips, whether it be vacation, that kind of stuff. That timing could line up. So we have to be prepared. We have to understand, take this information that we give you. And I know a lot of you guys do this. So I'm kind of preaching to the choir here, but it is important. But I will tell you this, in a room full of probably 80 to 90% armed people, I never felt safer in my life. And that's the key. That's the big key, is that, I guarantee you a mass shooter wouldn't even think twice about going into a GOA rally to shoot the place up. Guarantee.
But a suicide bomber would.
Suicide bomber might. And that's the difference. That's actually a big difference, is that these people that are radically indoctrinated into this ideology, their loss of life is a gain for them. Even as Christians, we talk about to live as Christ, to die as gain. That's straight biblical. But in our religion, it's not go out there and try to die. It's go out there and try and save as many people as you can through the word of the gospel. And then when it comes your time, when God has allotted your time to die, then you get to go to heaven. And whether that's in multiple different ways, a car accident or old age or cancer or whatever it is appointed to us to die. But we don't teach the same thing that radical Islam does, that if you actually die, you get rewarded for jihad. You get rewarded for taking others' lives that are infidels. And that's the big difference. But I will say this: arm yourself with information, arm yourself with guns, learn how to use them, and make sure that you understand that you don't always, and I'm going to get a little crazy here. John Lovell, many of you guys may know him, Warrior Poet Society, big YouTube guy, amazing dude. He's a pastor, former Ranger, really, really on the cutting edge of fighting culture wars and spiritual wars and all of that kind of stuff. He was at the GOA supper, which was like for the advocates dinner or whatever. And we got invited to that. So we went. And during his speech, he said, I'm going to just tell you guys, when I look at a no guns allowed, when I look at a gun-free zone, I'm just thinking, how can I sneak one in? And he's like, I may or may not have snuck a silenced handgun into Disney. So I'm not telling you what to do, but I may have also snuck guns into places that I wasn't supposed to have them. And there's an old adage of, I would rather be judged by 12 than carried by 6. And that goes for my entire family. I would rather have the means to fight back and know your surroundings. Obviously, if you're going to take that risk, that is a risk that you do take. But now is the time for us to start thinking outside of the box, and because we're not going to do anything bad with those things. But if something bad comes in, we may have the means to defend ourselves. And that's a big, big deal.
And if I go somewhere where I can't carry a firearm, I mean, I absolutely can't. I'm carrying some sort of impermissive weapon or two.
Correct. And there's all kinds of options. You can get some of the G10 stuff that will get through metal detectors, that kind of stuff. But if you're going to buy a weapon, if you're going to buy gear, don't buy it and let it sit on a shelf. Buy it and train with it. Maybe buy two so that you have one to train with and then one that you can take with you, but take this stuff seriously. You don't need 5 million guns. You need a few good guns, but you need to know how to use them. And that's all really, really important things. I'm going to get off my soapbox. S2, you have anything to add to that?
Nope, I've spoken my piece on it.
And we have spoken our piece ad nauseum on this stuff. I think every show we talk about this because it's that important. Okay, we're gonna start moving a little bit faster because we're already at an hour and I don't want to keep you guys all night. But so this is from homeland.house.gov. This is the terrorism threat snapshot. 50 plus jihadist cases in 30 states, including dozens of attempts to provide material support to ISIS, providing material support to Hezbollah and Al Qaeda, receiving military type training from ISIS and Hezbollah, and vehicle ramming attacks. This is a great resource, so I would look this up because it has a list of a lot of areas that you can go. Also, Western Europe, and it breaks down a lot of key developments over the past several years, and it goes in reverse chronological order. So it comes the latest stuff first, and you can scroll back and look at key developments. Really, really awesome resource, and you guys can see how much information is here and the dates that follow up. We don't have time to go through a lot of that, but it's important for us. Moving to the next, you guys may recognize this guy, Chris Heaven. I don't know if you guys have ever heard of Chris Heaven. Great dude, really awesome guy. Personal friend of mine. You guys may not know that, but yeah, he says you can hardwire your firearm skills under chaos or not. In the latter case, you will not fare well if you find yourself on the X, which means the place where the attack happens. When I am hammering on this topic, thanks to the Biden administration opening our borders for 4 years, we are covered up in hardcore terrorist cells, Al-Qaeda, ISIS, Hezbollah, Hamas, and all of them. The intel is overwhelming. 9/11 2.0 will be worse than 99.9% of Americans can imagine. Stack up your preps, water, food, ammo, etc. Train like your life depends on it, because at the end of the day, it absolutely does. Most range warriors crumble when crap hits the fan. Under pressure, heart pounding, adrenaline dumping, you go into condition black and can't hit the broadside of a barn at point blank range. Stress inoculation is the only way to hardwire skills under chaos. Force on force drills, scenario training, timed stress courses. These are all separate. These are what separates survivors from statistics. In the fight for your life, you will not rise to the occasion. You will fall to your level of training. Train like your life depends on it, because one day it will. Sun Tzu. Just like what we were just talking about. Don't buy 500 guns. Buy a couple of guns and buy a bunch of training from professionals. We offer training at Righteous Savages in the Midwest. There's a ton of other places. Warrior Poet Society, Haley Strategic, what's a Front Sight? That's another great training place. There's tons. Waft, Gun Sight. There are tons of places around the country. If you're looking for long range shooting, learning how to hone your skills, honing your skills at long range actually helps you close range. Since I learned how to shoot long range, I am so much better close range, and it's actually incredible because I know I can hit a target from 1,000 yards. So 5, 6, 7 yards is nothing. Even 25 or 30 yards is really nothing. So once you hone those skills, if you're looking for long range classes, man, check out Sidewinder Concepts. My personal friend Adrian over there, Army sniper, 10 years in Army sniper, and incredible. And he has taught, I've seen him teach Marine snipers that have 30 years experience stuff. So he's a wealth of knowledge on this stuff. He really dedicates himself to having a good, amazing curriculum on that stuff. And he took my 12-year-old to 1,000 yards while alongside a 30-year Marine. So kind of incredible, that kind of stuff. But S2, I want to turn it to you and talk about stress inoculation, because when our military guys are going through basic training, first of all, it is the whole idea is to break you down and build you back up the way that you should be, so that you have military bearings, so that you can handle stress, so you can handle that kind of stuff. But when you're in military style training, stress inoculation can be a big part of that, especially if you're like in a special operations type of job. Those guys go through stress inoculation constantly. So let's talk about that and the importance of it.
So one of the things that I find with a lot of people that are even first-time firearm purchasers or people that aren't familiar with shooting is the one truth that they're going to have to address is someday you're going to have to point that weapon at a person. So mindset is number one of everything to being prepared for those situations. You got to get your mind right. And one of the pieces of advice that I give people, and I'm probably going to get some hate for this, I don't care because it works. Go find an airsoft field. Go play airsoft.
Absolutely. Yep.
Because that will, especially because it has, depending upon the field that you find, you'll have a lot of CQB stuff going on. You might have a big open field where there's a lot of wooded area stuff going on that will give you experience in hunting and tracking people, and most importantly, getting you used to pointing a firearm or something that looks like a firearm that fires a projectile at a human being. So those are one of the things in real life, and you'll find out real quick. Can I do a magazine change when I'm in a firefight? And yeah, you'll find out real quick. What do I do? Get up and run away? No, my friends are there. I can't get up and run away. So you figure it out or you die.
Yeah.
But the CQB stuff, yeah, it's really good for that kind of stuff, but it also gets you used to pointing a gun at somebody and actually pulling the trigger. And once you can get that mindset in your head that you're not there to play a game, you're there to train. You're there to train to stay alive. That was my mindset every time I went to the airsoft field. And I did. Let's put it that way.
I'll tell you, I used to be skeptical of airsoft, and I have a couple of, actually, our new cameraman, Luke, he's 18 and a young guy, but he just started in real firearms like last year. From the moment, and I actually was there when he actually first started shooting. His first AR-15 he shot was mine, and I'll tell you this: he was right on with controls of the weapons, because when they build airsoft guns, they'll even build them like my Mark 18. He has a Mark 18. It's the same weight as mine. Like it's the same weight, same feel. All the components feel the same. So when you're using it CQB, the only thing you're not getting is obviously the real world recoil. But I mean,
unless you have a gas gun.
Yes, yeah, those can't actually do it. But yeah, I actually am and there's a lot of guys out there. Garantham actually pushes like that. Now, I will use this one caveat. There's a lot of silliness that goes on some airsoft fields. There's guys running around in costumes and doing stupid crap. If you're going to do this, find a group that want to do the serious stuff. And they're all over the place.
Take your friends with you. And when you go, when you go, scope out. You'll notice the people there that are serious about what they're doing. I mean, most nobody out there takes it completely seriously, but you'll notice the people that are taking it seriously, what they're doing out there. They're not out there to die. A lot of these
Yep.
people do this in competition and mill sims all around the
Hmm.
country. I was one of them, and
Yep. And
we went up against special forces guys out on fields all the time.
yep. And I'll tell you this: there's a lot of special forces guys that go out play airsoft in these big events. There's one out west, Milsim South or Milsim
Hmm.
West. That's a
Yep.
huge one. There's one down south. There's some big events that happen throughout the year where there's hundreds of people in these events, and they're really cool. I'm actually planning on kind of getting into them when I actually have some freedom in my schedule, which is probably not anytime soon. But it is a great way. It's a great way for you to practice certain skills that you'll never really be able to practice on a flat range. And yeah, I completely agree with you. I don't see what I don't think that that's a call at all for any types of hate or anything, because
You get to practice. You get to practice muzzle discipline. You get to practice
Mhm,
uh, magazine changes under stress. You know, what's a
yep.
tactical magazine change? You get to practice all of that.
Yep. And honestly, the BBs don't feel the best. So you still get kind of that reaction of like, ow, that kind of hurts. So it kind of makes your mind start thinking, especially when people are over there putting suppressive fire in and you're getting, you're having to dodge and crawl on your belly and stuff. That's very much realistic to what it would be like under live fire. So
Yeah,
yeah,
and it
you're gonna
hurts. It hurts.
yeah. If I actually had it pulled up, I would show you Ty, who actually works with us at Righteous Savages. He got actually pelted with like 200 BBs in his back by these guys that were being jerks. And dude, it's so brutal looking. But anyways, moving on. I think that's actually great advice. I don't have any issues with that at all. And so this is from Command 11. So JTTF, Joint Terrorism Task Force, was actively monitoring this idiot, and nothing happened. So this is police say this is Islamist vandalized MIT buildings, the Massachusetts State House, and George Washington statue, along with having homemade bombs. His mother, arrested for spitting on an officer, says it's the IDF's fault.
Erica and Jessica, we learned today in court and from court documents that this man from Everett is accused not only of those 3 vandalism incidents, but also he allegedly left 2 explosive devices on the Boston Common. At first appearing in court with his shirt covering his face, but eventually 25-year-old Jeremiah Sawaked revealed himself. The man from Everett is accused of several vandalism incidents.
One at the George Washington statue, one at the State House, and one at 2 separate MIT buildings.
The vandalism at the State House entrance took place in the early morning hours of July 23rd, the suspect leaving a painted footprint behind. Later that morning, police found 2 explosive devices in the Boston Common.
The defendant was found to have discarded 2 homemade improvised explosive devices, IEDs, in the Boston Common area.
Court documents reveal Sawaked was being monitored by the Joint Terrorism Task Force in the state for his alleged involvement with a pro-Palestinian group.
The defendant has been identified as a part of a group called the Direct Action Movement for Palestinian Liberation. That group, based on the Mass State Police investigation, is known to promote vandalism and destruction of property.
He does not belong to any group. They have no evidence of that.
Sawaked's mother tells us that he is innocent and being wrongly accused, punished for his views on Gaza.
You're saying you think he's wrongly accused, they have the wrong person?
Yes, because my son was online, had broadcast speaking against Israel, and then the Israeli military put his address, his phone number, everyone online.
Anyways, yeah. So we're finding this stuff, and honestly, if those bombs had been, honestly, a lot of times terrorists are pretty bad at making bombs. But yeah, if they ever go off,
They're getting pretty technologically advanced with some of the stuff they're doing.
Yep. So I mentioned Sarah Adams earlier. She posted this yesterday. That was credible. Time to relearn. Bojinka everyone, because it's the inspiration for AQ's upcoming airline plot over U.S. soil. This is U.S. Air Marshal National Council, same day, posted this video. Let's watch it. Minute 20.
Of a possible use of aircraft as a weapon?
I was not aware of any information of it being used as a weapon that was credible.
That was credible.
In January of 1995, planned, among other things, to crash an airplane into the CIA headquarters. 1998, August, the intelligence community obtained information planned to fly an explosive-laden plane from a foreign country into the World Trade Center. September 1998, information that Osama bin Laden's next operation could involve flying aircraft loaded with explosives into a U.S. airport. In November 1998, it planned a suicide attack, crashing an airplane packed with explosives into Ataturk's tomb. In March 1999, plans by an Al-Qaeda member who was a U.S. citizen to fly a hang glider into an Egyptian presidential palace. And in August 2001, the intelligence community obtained information regarding a plan to either bomb the U.S. embassy in Nairobi or crash an airplane into it. The CIA disseminated several of these reports to the FBI and to the agencies, and one of the agencies that it disseminated this to was the FAA.
Warnings galore. Warnings galore. Last post, and then we'll kind of close this down. This is from Command 11. And this is a response to, I just heard from TPA Sarah that this guy is going to speak at the UN in New York, and plans to travel to the US. Isn't that the kind of betrayal to the US soldiers who were murdered and to their families in letting him enter the country? Mr. Mike Waltz, we really expect you to make everything clear. By the way, did even al-Jawlani, former Al-Qaeda member, ever apologize to the families of U.S. soldiers killed in Iraq and in Syria while he fought with Al-Qaeda in Iraq and later, maybe you can pronounce that, S2?
Jabhat al-Nusra.
Jabhat al-Nusra in 2003, 2011. Never. And Khalid said, yes, TPA Sarah is absolutely correct. This is a victory lap for Al-Qaeda to have their commander visit New York City during September, which you can be sure it will include a visit to the World Trade Center. Apparently, he will also visit the White House as well. Do you think he'll offer prayer for those killed and those who carried out the attack? Jawlani was a mistake of selection of president of Syria, and the worst mistake to invite him to the U.S. It's an insult to the American people and the soldiers that were killed and injured and fought. Yeah, somebody needs to stir some stink about that. I'm not cool with that. So your thoughts?
Fuck him.
Couldn't have said it better. Okay, so we have covered a lot of information, a lot of data, a lot of history, and as we said earlier, history is a lens into the future. Past events will always predict future events. History does not only repeat itself, sometimes it rhymes. So the intelligence is really overwhelming and undeniable. We face an unprecedented terrorist threat that has been deliberately enabled for 4 years of open border by the Biden administration. Those 200,000 SIAs that we talked about, special interest aliens, released into our communities, into our cities, and they are from multiple terrorist organizations operating on American soil. The time for complacency is at an end. We cannot be complacent anymore. Your first action is conduct family security assessment. Talk to your family, figure it out, have conversations with them, and also have conversations at the level your family can understand. I have 3 small children. My oldest can understand these things. In fact, I have gotten into the practice of when we go into a restaurant, I ask him, where are the exits? What action are you going to take if somebody comes through that door? I have these conversations with my almost 13-year-old because he can actually understand them. I am teaching him to recognize patterns, to give himself a threat assessment. I talked him through his school. We went and visited before he had his first day of school. And then I asked him yesterday, do you know where the closest exit is in every room that you have class? Can you break a window if necessary to get out of the building? Because that's the first step. And yeah, I hate that I have to have these conversations with my children. And damn the freaking politicians. Damn them to hell that let this evil into our country. Because this is putting my family, this is putting your family, this is putting American citizens at risks that we didn't need to undergo, that we could have avoided. And
we still can.
Infuriating. And we still can, but we have to take action. And I don't want my children to become statistics. I don't want my wife to become statistic. They're all in soft targets because I live in a blue state and they go to school every day. And my wife's a school teacher. And screw all of these politicians enriching themselves, opening up our borders and getting paid off by foreign countries. Screw them, because they're the ones that are at fault. And they get to sit in their ivory towers with their personal security while we have to figure this out and make means and plans for this mess. Sorry, I got a little fired up there for a second. I digress. But understand and have these conversations with your family. In your daily routines, establish emergency protocols. I'm actually currently finishing up all of the build on my personal vehicle, my truck. And I'm making a video for our YouTube channel that's going to be how to make your vehicle. I'm going to do it on my truck, my minivan, and then I'm going to use a small car to give you guys 3 different scenarios. You guys, shameless plug, you guys can go over and subscribe to our channel. We're putting out gun reviews and stuff like that now, but I've got some other reviews and thinking points for you guys on being prepared for anything, whether it be a natural disaster to a terror attack to a mass shooting event, how to set up your vehicle to be able to most effectively and efficiently respond to it. That's an important thing. Understanding emergency protocols. Ensure every family member knows what to do during a crisis. Second, train like your life depends on it. Train like if you don't train hard, you're going to die. Get that in your minds, guys. Because if you don't train hard and you don't have this, and I want every one of you guys to be safe. I want all of our listeners, all of this family in Survival Dispatch and Righteous Savages to be safe and to survive if an attack comes close to you. I pray to the Lord in heaven that it doesn't. But the reality is it could. First aid skills are very important. Tactical awareness. I talked about that with my 12-year-old. Have those conversations. They feel awkward maybe a little bit at first. After you do them a little bit, then they start becoming normal. And what else becomes normal is people start looking. If you have young kids, make a game out of it. Hey guys, find an exit. If you find an exit, I'll so-and-so, and do all of those things. If you are trained, you can live to fight another day. You can live through you can make it through these things. But if you're not, you will become a statistic. If you're not fit, if you're not trained, you're going to die, and you may cause your family to die. That's a sobering truth, but it's a fact. S2, I'm going to let you add on to that.
Muscle memory takes over. That's all I can say. A lot of reps. Get it done.
Yep. Sorry, guys. I'm a little worked up.
I can tell.
But,
I almost didn't
but
want to
this
say
is,
anything.
but this is something I take very seriously because it affects me. Like, the last thing I want to do is get that phone call. The last thing any parent wants to get is a phone call about their children. Whether it be, hey, you got detention because he was an a-hole in class, or he's not coming home. And no parent should have to bury their children. And I know this is kind of morbid and dark, but that's the reality of this threat. So get serious about it. That's really all I've got. Shout out to Tim Smith, who submitted yesterday's best news story. Immediate action is necessary. DC's police union backs Trump's Capitol takeover. And if you guys aren't aware of this, Trump invoked a actual law that is on the books that allows him to bring the federal government, and he's bringing in troops to quell the crime levels in DC. If you guys don't know, DC is one of our most violent and crime-riddled cities, and they did that. So this is the story perfectly captures the urgency of our current situation. We have violence in our streets of our major cities. We have drugs running rampant, and we have a media that wants to distract more than it wants to report the truth to you. That's why we have a platform. That's why you guys tune into us, so that you can get the truth. And if we get something wrong, we admit it. That's something very, very that we take very seriously. We want to get everything right.
Wait till the indictments start coming. That's going to be fun.
Yes. Okay, let's do the conflicted question, and then we will let you guys go for the evening. S2. Let's hear that conflicted question again. Be ready before we start. Be ready to give your answers in the comments. I'll read a couple of them, and and then we'll give our answers.
Okay, smack that like button while you're listening. Here we go. Is ambushing an equal force that is fighting against you an intelligent move, or does that make you less than honorable adversary? This is a question that nothing needs to be answered.
So my answer would be there's not enough information about the equal force. Are they friendly? Are they hostile? Or do they pose any kind of threat? The question doesn't really give me enough information to say, and that would really decide whether it was intelligent move or less than honorable. If it's a threat or poses a threat, then yes, I would say that would be maybe a smart move. But if they don't pose a threat, then that's probably not necessarily the best route, because you don't know if you're going to win the fight. You don't know if they, in all honesty, do you even know they're an equal force? There's not enough intelligence. There's not enough information about this question for me to logically answer it. And that's kind of where I end up landing. So it depends on what the equal force is in my book.
My answer is I'm there to win a fight. It says equal force that is fighting against you. Okay, they're fighting against me.
Fighting against you. So I apparently can't read, so that changes things. So
you must learn to listen to instructions.
Yeah.
But it says they're fighting against you, and I'm there to win. I'm not there to lose. So anything is fair in war.
Yeah. So let me just take back my answer. Yes, I think that it is an intelligent move. So I will just tell you guys that I came straight from work, and not excuse, but anyways, I think
brain
it would
not
be an
functioning, brain
move.
not functioning, brain.
Yeah,
not functioning.
well, that's just the way it is. I'm still kind of fired up about everything. So we'll go with that. I think it is an intelligent move, and make sure that you strategically understand fighting and how superior forces, high grounds, and all of those strategic advantages, pick the ground that you're going to fight on. It would be the first thing that I would say. If you know where you're going to fight and you know all of the choke points, then 9 times out of 10, 99 times out of 100, you're going to win. And force on force. So, anyways, yeah. So let me see.
Nobody's
here.
answering shit.
Yeah, nobody's answering. I'm very disappointed, guys. But before we let you go, smack that like button, smash it, get us up in those algorithms so that more people can understand and hear what we have to say. Quick reminder before we let you go, join the crusade by signing up for a free Substack account that gives you the Saturday Watch Guide, which is a list of everything we do throughout the week, including thumbnails, links, and descriptions. That way you never miss an episode. And remember, that's Big Tech's way of suppression, is to not notify you that we are live, which we are every day except for Saturday, Monday through Friday, and also on Sunday. So always know that we're going to be live unless you hear otherwise. And please don't forget our show sponsors: CCW Safe for self-defense coverage, Carnival for high-quality meats. Use Eat Meat for 10% off. And Compliant Technologies, if you're a police officer, if you are the spouse of a police officer, or if you're connected to your local agencies, let them know about Compliant Technologies. The gloves are amazing. I have been zapped with them. If you guys want a funny video, it's on our YouTube in one of our shorts. When we were at SHOT Show in Vegas, myself and Dave Kemp got zapped with it, and I was on my knees in about 0.2 seconds. These things are incredible and real. Nothing like a taser, much more effective. Chris, Jeff, Randy, and Khalid will be back tomorrow evening at the usual time, 7 p.m. Eastern, and their next episode on their Road to 9/11 version 2.0, Part 6. Rehearsals, dry runs, and test events already happened. False alarms, multi-shooter drills, and power outages, none were accidents. S2, you had something? Yeah.
I want to address a question by Lat in the YouTube chat there. It says, what's something we can do to keep from being an accidental friendly fire accident during a terrorist attack? Lat, one of the things you can do with that is the minute you hear something going off, know where your exits are to start with. Hit the floor, crawl out of there as fast as you can, and find cover. I don't mean concealment, I mean cover, something that's going to stop a bullet.
Yeah. So, clarification: is he asking to keep from actually shooting somebody accidentally, or
no, to keep from getting shot by the friendly guys?
Okay, and so this would actually expand out to police, and one of the things that I'm actually doing to up my abilities, and this will be a part of the videos, is like getting a radio where you can actually monitor police activity. So if you go in and you're fighting against some kind of terrorist, you're trying to quell a terrorist attack, and there are different scenarios, I know that, but if you're a prepared citizen and you want to actually stand up, or first responders are not coming because of these tiered attacks that we've talked about, I would say purchasing a radio that you could actually carry on you, where you can monitor police activity. Now, you can't transmit on those channels, but you can listen to them, so you can actually hear.
I recommend the Uniden Home Patrol.
There you go.
It's small. It'll fit in your pocket. It'll fit in a briefcase, and it reads everything from everywhere where you're located.
Yep. And S2, could you do me a favor? Could you put a link of that in the Guardians chat?
Sure.
A link to that. Yeah, just throw a link through that for our Guardians. That's our paid membership. If you guys are interested in that, obviously over on the Substack, you can do that, and that gets you access to that. We put a lot of information on there, and I'm also going to be posting some things in there of things that I'm going to be using. But there's ways that you can identify yourself if you're actually building an active shooter response kit. Have some sort of vest, high-vis vest, that identifies you as something. And maybe you call 911 as well when you go in, if you have time. Obviously, all of this stuff is situationally dependent, but maybe you tell them, hey, I am fighting against this. When the police come, Make sure they know that I am in here. And all of that information is helpful for police. And the dispatcher may tell you not to go in, whatever. Doesn't mean you have to obey their orders, but that way the police at least know that there are some friendlies in there with guns. The instant that the police show up and you are in a safe place, put your guns down, because that's the way that you can. That's the way that you can really pose yourself as not a threat. Arthur G says $600. Buddy, you don't understand radios if you think that's expensive.
Nope.
Or guns. Unfortunately, that's a reality. We're not talking, the cheap Chinese radios that you can buy for $50 on, and then those have their purpose and their use. But if you really want something,
the problem is with those radios, the police departments don't use analog radio pretty much anymore, unless they have to.
The key. Yep, that is the key. They have gone to different frequencies that are harder to get with low-level radios.
But you can get them with the home patrol unit I just mentioned.
Correct. So, and that's another thing. We're actually getting ready to do a full comms series over on the Righteous Savages channel to help you guys understand that, and I'll post some of that stuff for you guys as well. But we're going to cut it off there. I appreciate all the questions, guys. That's awesome. And it shows that you guys are interested in this stuff. So until we see you guys again, thank you as subscribers, as sponsors. You're the reason we do this stuff. But we're going to get training, get serious about this. Talk to your families and communities. God bless America. Enjoy this closing video.
Hoorah.